and Mono Black aggro here in the elimination round. Two great decks for Searing Blood.
Yeah, I think the real question is going to come down to what kind of sideboard action. I mean, because game one is going to be challenging. But after sideboard, at least he has access to some big threats like Whip of Erebos and Desecration Demon. The life gain from Whip of Erebos could potentially just be, huge.
So we are underway. Neil on the play as the fourth seed playing Red, White, Burn. Turn one, Mutavault from him, Jackson. Knorr fires back with a Swamp and a Tormented Hero. Neil plays a Sacred Foundry untapped and sends his Mutavault in the red zone.
Wow.
I like it.
That is, let's be clear which one of us is the red deck.
Right. It would be one thing if he played a Mountain and attack with the Mutavault, because that means, I got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
But when you play a Sacred Foundry on tap, that is a man who means business.
I like it.
Just a Swamp and no additional threats from Jackson.
But he does have a removal spell up so that Neil is definitely not going to want to attack with that Mutavault again.
Keep in mind that after game one of this matchup, we're going to be coming back here to ask a trivia question, the winner of which will receive 3 free months of Star City Games Premium, so make sure to sit tight for that.
Or, depending on who you are from France, free months of free premium.
I do not speak French well enough to get that. I can contextually pick up what you mean, but...
Some particularly famous Nassifian Hall of Famers have a particular dialect, but...
All
right, so we got another classic scry situation. What does he need when he's got a well-balanced hand? So what is he hoping to draw? Does he just keep it because it's a spell?
Yeah, and then the other question is, does he want to use his Chain of the Rocks on the Tormented Hero this turn?
He powers up the Mutavault regardless of the removal spell, and it turns out it was a bluff. He just calls, and it pays off.
Neil Hartman means business.
That's like... So first, I'm just going to shock myself to get in there. And then it's you did nothing and kept up 2 mana, and there's so many cards you could have. Let me get in there again.
I love it. Jackson with a second copy of Tormented Hero and a Mutavault after combat. And deck lists are public. Neil knows that there's 3 main deck copies of BioBlight in Jackson's list, but just goes for it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Boros Guildgate, the play from Neil. A Chandra's Phoenix.
Is that a defensive Phoenix?
If we're going to play a Sacred Foundry on tap and crack for 2 on turn 2 with that Mutavault, I can't imagine being on defense. Also noteworthy, all joking aside, Neil does have World Leader's Helix in his hand, which is a really big incentive to just be as aggressive as possible as raise. He does try to hold back on defense, but Jackson with the ultimate price to take care of the Phoenix.
Yeah, Chandra's Phoenix paying the ultimate price indeed. Jackson continuing to actually put up a pretty good fight. This is looking really good. It seems like he's advantaged here. Or do you think it's about to all slip away as soon as this World Leader's Helix hits?
I think the Helix is going to be really, really tough, but Jackson still with a lot of pressure, and it's going to be hard for Neil to answer all these creatures individually, so he's going to have to sort of ignore that and race, and Jackson might be able to win that sort of fight.
Now, he could alternatively just play the Ash Zealot as a potential blocker or attacker, Chain to the Rocks to take out one of the potential attackers, Boros Charm just go upstairs for 4, World Leader's Helix next turn, go upstairs for 4. Sounds a little aggressive, but...
I think that I prefer this sequence with Neil is setting up where he's going to play Chain to the Rocks, getting the Tormented Hero out of the way, and set up a World Leader's Helix that he can cast.
And just establish control?
Yeah. A big swing in the damage ratio, you get your Phoenix back. You can play multiple creatures next turn.
Now, you could always just play Ash Zealot and then get in there with the Zealot and the Mutavault.
Yeah, he can still continue to race here, but I think this is a really good spot to try to land World Leader's Helix. It's a lot of life.
Jackson could really use something like a Herald of Torment, something to make things a little bigger,
Yeah. He's got a lot of life to play with, too. He's at 16 still, so...
Do you think the most likely scenario is Mogi's Marauder? No, it looks like he's... Oh, yeah, so he's going to go with the Marauder after all.
So fires at the Mutavault, plays the Marauder. And we'll see if this warrants some sort of response.
Which one do you think is not going to get Intimidate? Like, he gets to give 2 of his creatures Intimidate. Which 2 do you give Intimidate to?
I would imagine it is the two black creatures, the devotion count still matters, theoretically. It's all kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I mean, I guess I don't know. This all feels pretty marginal.
The nice thing about keeping the Mutavault alive is the potential to actually bestow the Herald of Torment if it comes to that.
Yeah, it appears he's targeting the Mutavault and the Marauder.
Looks like we're going to see, we are, War Leader's Helix. And it does hit the Mutavault, which effectively lets Neil break even on life.
Yep. Does not allow him to return the Phoenix, but remember, he still has Boros Charm left over as a card that can fulfill exclusively that task.
Yeah, but at this point, he's kind of far behind. And I can't help but wonder, would you like to have that 2 life back per person?
Oh, definitely the way this game is played out here. I bet Neil wishes he could have taken that back.
Although, I don't know. Sometimes you got to send people a message.
Just to let them know, you're in the elimination rounds now. I mean business.
Yeah. Ash Zealot.
Now, Ash Zealot on D, in conjunction with a Mutavault on D, and Boros trying to potentially give an Indestructible, Neil might be able to make some real inroads in Jackson's board this turn if Jackson gets a little too aggressive with his attack.
Well, he does have Bile Blight, which means that Neil's at least going to be able to get one creature, or Jackson's going to be able to get at least one creature through.
Animates Mutavault.
And he does block the Tormented Hero, figuring the drain ability for 1 could potentially matter, whereas the second point of toughness only relevant for Shandra Pyromaster.
So Boros Charm at the end of the turn here, dealing 4 damage. I assume we'll be picking up Chandra's Phoenix as well. But Neil with a lot of really powerful draws here, most notably War Leader's Helix and Searing Blood near the top of the list.
Is that another Helix?
That
no,
is
it's a land. Rough.
I mean, Neil can just try to sit back on D here and buy time for some of his powerful draws.
Yeah, this Chandra's Phoenix is his anchor, man. It's like it's holding down the fort.
Thought sees the draw, and Jackson casts it. A little risky to be casting it here.
Definitely.
It's definitely not a freebie.
No.
And now both players on empty, so if Neil picks up a burn spell here, he can shift this game around. It is Lightning Strike.
Not the worst. Trades with most things.
Well, I think he actually just wants to Lightning Strike Jackson right now, get that Phoenix back and start hitting.
I like it.
And that's what you see here. Picks up the Phoenix. And talk about a deck that really utilizes Chandra's Phoenix well, huh?
Definitely. I mean, this is a deck that has not just tons of burn, but also even Shandra Pyromaster for the added ribbons.
Yep.
Phoenix continues mercilessly.
Jackson now down to 3. And there's War Leader's Helix. And Jackson reveals a hand of 2 Swamps. And Neil now up a game.
Yeah, that extra damage denied Jackson extra turns to try to draw out of it.
Pretty harrowing game there for Neil, but Chandra's Phoenix just provided a lot of card advantage or something kind of resembling card advantage.
Oh, straight up card advantage. Anybody who would tell you otherwise is a silly, silly goose.
So we're going to be moving on to the sideboard here, but we are going to come back to the booth momentarily as we have a trivia contest to give out. Now, for those of you maybe tuning in for the broadcast for the first time, the rules of this are, my buddy Patrick over here, he's going to be asking you a question. You're going to tweet that answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. Of the correct responders, one will be chosen at random to receive the 3 months of free premium. Now, it is not about speed. We don't just select the first person who's able to respond correctly. It's about accuracy. So don't worry about having to punch in your answer first, but punch it in fairly quickly. And if you have the right answer, then you have the opportunity to win 3 free months of SCG Games Premium. So what is that question?
We saw a Hall of Famer on camera today. What is that Hall of Famer's name?
So you have to go back a little bit in the archives of round 1 feature match. Can you name the Magic Hall of Famer that we had in the feature match area earlier today.
Tweet at us at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and you can win 3 months of premium if you are randomly selected.
I'm going to give you a little hint because this is a little bit tougher if you're just tuning in the broadcast now. We will accept both his real name and his nickname. Both are acceptable answers.
I like it.
So we're going to be moving on to the sideboard here momentarily. I have Neil's burn list in front of me. We're looking at a sideboard now. 4 Skull Cracks, 4 Fire Drinker Satyrs, 2 Fated Conflagration, a Chain of the Rocks, 2 Mizium Mortars, and 2 Spark Troopers. This is about as good. This is about as good of a matchup for Fire Drinker Satyr as you could write up. Sorry, not for Fire Drinker Satyr. Sorry, I had
for
that
Mizium Mortars?
Yeah, I had that confused momentarily. I thought it was the new Satyr. But
yeah,
sorry. But he does have additional removal spells in his sideboard. Chain of the Rocks, 2 copies of Mizium Mortars.
Oh yeah, the Fire Dancer would be sick right
here.
Yeah,
I thought this was Fire Dancer, sorry. But that would be insane to have here. But instead, we're just looking at pretty much just some more removal spells, a Chain of the Rocks, 2 Mizium Mortars, and potentially the 2 Spark Troopers as well, I believe are in play. Jackson has a little bit of instant speed removal, but he's not that flush with it.
Yeah, on the other side, Jackson has access to 2 Desecration Demons, which are a little too big to burn. I mean, they can get hit by Chain of the Rocks, but they are pretty big. And then he's got access to Whip of Erebos for big life gain, and that's, I think, a super important one in this matchup. Beyond that, it's just a matter of if he wants to tune his removal at all, you know?
Yeah, a Desecration Demon is excellent. I've lost to that card playing red-white burn strategies probably more than any other card. Maybe Master of Waves is near the top of the list as well. They're both threats that are basically just Chain to the Rocks or bust, and Jackson's deck is so aggressive that those Chain to the Rocks are taxed doing other things.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, Desecration Demon, not at its absolute best against decks like Huey's from earlier, the blue-white black deck, but instead really shining against anybody trying to use red removal, you know? Or anybody that just relies on bashing and doesn't have creature kill at all.
Yeah, but in any case, this is definitely an uphill battle for Jackson rather than this matchup. His draw there was a really solid opening. Neil was a little slow out of the gates, but the power of War Leader's Helix and Chandra's Phoenix was still enough for Neil to take that first game down.
Yeah, I do think that, well, Neil starts out ahead. I think Jackson gains a little bit more from sideboarding than Neil does. The Desecration Demons and Whip are just a little bit more high impact, whereas just tuning the removal from Neil Hartman, it's good, but it's not quite as high impact. So hopefully Jackson's hoping that he'll have regained a little bit of the percentage that he started down.
I'll also say this, when I've been playing Red White Burn, when you're playing against a deck, Shandra, I actually don't think you zero very often. I think you're just trying to go ultimate when you have an opening for it, because it's game over if you get to its ultimate. When you're playing against a deck that is actually presenting 1 toughness creatures, I mean, you're happy enough to play Shandra as it is, just dealing 1 point of damage and taking up and threatening the ultimate. When you're actually gunning down things along the way, it is quite the card.
Yeah, that card is pretty great. I love the number of people who, when the 3rd Shandra came out, were like, oh, every Shandra has been bad. This one's finally going to be the good one. Even though if they read the card, it's not that strong.
Yeah.
And then because they got burned a 3rd time, when the 4th Chandra comes out, they're like, oh no, Chandra's any card that starts with the word Chandra isn't good.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, actually, I'm pretty sure this one is truly great.
Yeah, it's the fact that you can just zero for something approximating a card every turn means that anything else, all other things being equal, you can play it in sort of a proactive controller style deck and just be zeroing the whole time and get a lot of value that way. Yeah, it's really easy to imagine that scenario, at least.
As long as you don't have to have counter spells in your hand,
Right.
And even then, it's got some utility, just decreased.
But Shandra I really like watching the red-white burn deck in action, because you see decks like
it's
Jund.
A red deck?
Not even necessarily that. You see decks like Jund, they play Chandra, but that's just for the zero. You see some red beatdown decks play Chandra's Phoenix, but that's kind of just because a 2/2 Flyer Haster is good enough. The red-white burn deck is really squeezing a lot of extra value out of those cards.
Definitely. All right, each player, analyzing, is this what it's going to take? What do you think Jackson's looking for? Is it just the usual, he wants a good curve?
Good curve and Desecration Demon. Or Whip of Erebos, something to top off the curve that's high impact.
Here we see a turn 1 Duress. Duress functioning as a sort of proactive healing solve that has the added utility of being able to do things like hit Chandra or Chain to the Rocks.
Yeah, there's potentially a really good opening here for Jackson as he can open up a path for Desecration Demon to go uncontested by taking the Chain of the Rocks, or he can take Neil's best card for setting up the top of his deck because his hand's a little bit bad by taking the Mammoth Jet. So 2 really good paths here.
Plus, he gets to plan his turns accordingly. He knows what each of the next couple turns are going to look like, and he sees Neil's weakness. Neil's a little bit heavy on mana. 4 mana, 2 spells at this point.
So Jackson goes ahead and takes the Magma Jet. Neil draws. It is Boros Charm.
So what's Neil looking for with the scrying?
I just high impact cards.
A creature?
A creature would be very good. Shandra, the Planeswalker, would be very good here.
Something with some permanence.
Yeah. And not a purely reactive card. I don't think he really wants something like Chain of the Rocks right now. Boros Charm also in Neil's hand. I am not a huge fan of leaving Boros Charm in your deck against creature-oriented strategies post-board. I understand it's a high-impact, high-power card, but Neil is actually...
He's got to play a little more controlling.
Yeah, he has to be a little more defensive.
Yeah, it seems like that's the type of thing that you might be able to cut in exchange for, Mizium Mortars or something along those lines that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe even that Spark Trooper.
So Jackson plays Tormented Hero and a Mutavault. And draws another land.
I'm guessing we're not going to see a Sacred Foundry untapped this game.
Neil with just a mountain and a passing of the turn. And Tormented Hero comes across for 2.
What do you think of that not chaining the hero to the rocks?
I think it's a really aggressive move there to chain the rocks there when Desecration Demon or potentially other high impact cards. You had to assume that you're going to be able to answer that Tormented Hero, especially since it's 1 toughness. The upside, if you happen to draw Shandra and just shoot down the Tormented Hero for free, you're loath to kill 1 toughness creatures if you can avoid it.
And here we see Neil just upstairs. Let's see. Knocks. Yeah. See, are you there?
All right.
Are you there?
Come on.
Can you hear me?
Another Temple from Neil.
He's looking for any kind of permanent source of damage, but he also needs to kind of just establish control because at this point he's a couple steps behind. He hasn't taken very much damage yet, but he's looking at 3 attackers.
Yeah, and this is, I know I mentioned this just recently, but this is a real case study, I think. And once you want to play a really removal-oriented game, I think you need to de-emphasize the pure burn cards, the Boros Charms and the Skull Cracks. You need to have less of that going on.
Yep. No. Unless you just really value the utility, but I just don't think that the Indestructible is what you want against somebody who's packing a bunch of Bile Blights and the like.
So Jackson comes across with the Mutavault and the Tormented Hero and adds a Pack Rat after combat.
Chandra's Phoenix? It is.
Now is this potentially on defense as well?
I would assume so.
Yeah. And Neil simply passes the turn back to Jackson.
Things are starting to spiral out of control a little bit. I mean, this Pack Rat can attack this turn if he has a land. Or no, he doesn't even need a land. It can attack this turn with impunity.
Yep. Pack Rat is also occasionally a messy card for Red White Burn to play against. Once they get to untap with it, then you're just looking at overloaded Mizium Mortars or burning them out.
Yeah, this is going to get much, much worse before it gets better.
So
I think the Phoenix has to block there, right?
Well, it's on defense, so you can't neither attack nor block with it. So it looks like Chandra's Phoenix is going in front of Tormented Hero. 4 damage. Jackson is going to go. Appears that he's making a rat. Potentially using the Mutavault to pump it another time as well. We shall find out momentarily.
It's just much safer to make a rat than to get greedy and Bile Blight the Chandra's Phoenix and get in there with the Mutavault.
Yep.
Because, I mean, what if he kills the rat? At least this way he's got a lot of stuff going on, and he's got Neil down to what is it, 11? That's not bad.
Mizzy and Mortar still a big draw potentially for Neil, but he draws Ashzella instead.
Yeah, this is real tough. That Boros Charm being a Boros Charm instead of like, you know, some other removal spell.
Yeah. Well, he was really light on action this game, and when you're switching into the control role against a creature deck, and you flood out a little bit, all the spells you draw have to be really high impact, and contextually, Boros Charm was very close to a mulligan this game.
So what's the plan here? I know it sucks it's unfortunate to have to be on the plan on blocking plan, but
I think Neil just needs to batten down the hatches here.
anything to slow the bleeding.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to draw Mizzy and Mortars in a hurry, because he can't, at this point, he can't catch up to the rat, right? Like and he's got Jackson only down to 16, so he doesn't really have any way to make forward progress.
Yeah, he's just got to try to clog down the ground as much as possible and try to walk Jackson into a really powerful Mizzy and Mortars.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. It's possible Jackson gets a little, you know, a little too big for his britches and gets a little reckless with these rats, lets them trade for creatures in some way. But otherwise, Neil is going to need a Mortars in order to kill multiple rats at this point.
Neil does seem like he is really mulling over getting in with one of his creatures if he can. Of course, he would love to do that if possible, but instead decides discretion is the better part of valor and just sends the turn back to Jackson.
So now at this point, if you're Jackson, oh wait, oh, another rat. Wow, that's so big.
Yep.
Being able to play 2 rats in the same turn, huge.
Although this is a spot again where if Jackson gets a little messy here and just taps out for another rat before damage, let's say, this could be a really big Mizzy and Mortars. All right, so looks like Neil is just double chump blocking, and
See, it's interesting. I think what you have to do is double block the same rat so that he just goes for it in, you're just willing the Mortars to the top.
yeah.
Does he have any way to live through the turn? Signs point to not likely.
Yeah, I do not believe that he can beat Jackson if Jackson simply makes rats here. He might need to hold these lands back in his hand to try to bluff or something, but Neil in a ton of trouble.
Absolutely. A relatively quickly paced match. Both players playing in a very deliberate fashion. I don't think we're going to see too much different in Game 3. There we see yet another rat.
Yeah, now Jackson has lethal assembled, and Neil is without any defenses whatsoever. No spells in hand, no Meat Vault in play.
They pack it up.
Yeah, so moving on to a third game.
All right, we're going to jump back into the booth for a minute, aren't we? Or no, that's not till after.
Correct.
I was going to say, we've got a little something.
We're going to hang tight. We do have our trivia winner, but we got to wait until the matches are over before, we reveal too
Top
much.
secret.
It is top secret, but we do have a winner selected, so congratulations to that person who shall be named later.
I will say, it is not at, let's see, BM Kibler.
Correct.
It's not at William Jensen.
Correct.
It is not at Sam Black.
Correct.
So we will find out who it is in a moment.
So on to a third game here. I'm really interested now to see if Neil goes back to his sideboard, changes around. It looks like he pretty quickly decided to just start shuffling again. And, I know I talk about this a lot when you have Red, White, Burn on camera. A lot of people can just never get away from Boros Charm. It's so powerful. And in a lot of ways, it's the rationale for playing the deck. But it is incongruous with a lot of your plans in post-board games. Sometimes it doesn't matter because it's so mana efficient for the damage and the way the game plays out that that's really what you're in the market for. But other times it's not. And that game right there was a really good demonstration of the times that it's not.
It sounds like we have an update. Mitch Junker with his black-white humans deck, the kind of a sweet brew we saw earlier, he wins 2-0 over Robin Schmidt playing Mono Black Devotion.
And congratulations. I mean, again, the first Star City Games Open he's played in, 9-1, won a very dramatic match on camera to secure a spot in the top 8, now moving on to the semifinals tomorrow morning.
Yeah, playing great all weekend. Yeah. And it looks like Marcus Thibault with black-white mid-range has made quick work of James Gardner with blue-white devotion. We talked about how much people have been beating up on these blue devotion decks, and finally the same is true for James Gardner, the last holdout.
And now Marcus the Bow waits for the winner of this match tomorrow in the semifinals.
Absolutely. A lot of quick matches. A lot of. I mean, this is what happens when you see no Sphinx's Revelation decks in the top 8.
Oh, yeah, I don't know when the last
and
time
no
it is.
Palo decks for that matter too, right?
Yeah, a really curious top 8. I don't know when the last time you can say those two cards have not appeared in a standard open top 8. It may be never,
but
since they've been illegal together.
Yeah, but I will say 3 mono black decks and 3 black-white decks. Now, there are some exotic blends of these things, but it is definitely not the biggest surprise in the world to imagine that the format could end up, at the end of the day, a bunch of mono black and black white are ruling the roost.
Yeah, not unreasonable to assume. Although, in fairness, two of the decks you alluded to, I feel, are reasonable enough departures from what the stock lists look like. That's not really fair to typify them as mono black devotion or black white.
Well, actually, I'd say even 3. Because the mono black aggro and the black white humans, but there's also a third deck, one of the black devotion decks with the Pain Seer and the Herald of Torment.
Yeah.
So I think even though there's 6 black white and mono black decks, 3 of them are very unusual brews.
So underway here, game 3, Jackson, the first play of the game, a turn 2 pack rat on the draw that is met by lightning strike.
Yeah, Neil is not going to have that again.
Yeah, we've learned that lesson.
Time for Chandra's Phoenix to say hello.
And this is exactly the kind of opening that Neil really wants. He's under no pressure right now. He has Chandra's Phoenix as a recurring source of damage, presumably more removal or more threats in hand.
And we see Herald of Torment. Now, the interesting thing about Herald of Torment is that it actually is a little tougher to kill than you might think. I mean, obviously it dies the lightning strike and lots of other things, but the fact that it lives through Searing Blood and Magma Jet is not inconsequential.
Yeah, 3 toughness is important, although you see War Leader's Helix take it out. Yeah, my experiences with Red White Burn, sometimes even Night Veil Spectre randomly goes unchecked. You have a lot of 2 damage sources, not flush with as many 3 damage sources.
Chandra's Phoenix continuing to come over and play.
And a second Herald of Torment from Jackson. And Neil's hand is loaded. Storm Breath Dragon, another lightning strike.
No, just the lightning strike. I was going to say it could be the dragon. I don't know, the dragon's pretty good. But he decides he's going to Boros Reckoner instead, use his mana efficiently, and have the dragon as a surprise.
I think that's legit.
Definitely.
Especially when you know that Jackson's already shown duress in the last game. I like getting the last spell out of your hand. Now duress is no longer an issue.
Yeah, this is just a great opening. This is what Neil's deck is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Wow, he's moving in hyperspeed too now. He can feel it. He can taste it.
And now he can Chain of the Rocks this turn, or he can just deploy Storm Breath Dragon.
I think you got to send the dragon, right?
It is a little bit riskier if he has a removal spell, but I think this is a really good spot to land it.
Yeah. I think it's one of those spots where it's just like he's got no good blocks. His only hope is to have a removal spell, and if he has a removal spell, this way at least you get more damage in.
Yeah. And if Jackson wants to spend some turns spinning his tires with Pack Rat to try to stabilize the ground, that gives you a lot of draw steps to find the last pieces you need to finish off the game.
Oh, yeah. Plus, well, I mean, he's on a 1-turn clock anyway because the Reckoner is going to be able to do extra damage, and the Stormbreath Dragon and Chandra's Phoenix are not stopped by the Rat.
Yep. So we're going to block with Pack Rat and make a Rat before damage. I don't think this is anything too terribly productive, as the Reckoner now just deals an extra point to the Rat if he's feeling so inclined.
Don't you need to double block the Reckoner with the 2 Rats?
Yes.
I mean, obviously you lose both Rats, and you're still going to take 4, 8, 9, 10 total, but at least, then if you draw a removal spell, you can live it another turn.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a real tough spot.
Although it's not even clear if Jackson can afford to take 4 to the head if he double blocks the Reckoner. So the Reckoner is just putting him in the squeeze right now.
Yeah.
Another Pack Rat from Jackson.
The Pack Rat is a cruel mistress.
Not good 100% of the time.
Nope.
No matter what the rumors try to tell you.
There should be like a Time Walk Pack Rat.
So then you can untap and then you can make a rat and then start going about your business,
Yeah. Maybe just a Time Walk with Retrace, but
it's only
that's what
fair.
Pack Rat feels like. All right, so Pack Rat jumping in front of Boros Reckoner. Anything to live one more turn and have that glory. Jackson hoping to top deck a Damnation. I don't have the heart to tell him.
Yep. Reckoner trigger going at Jackson. And he can leave the Reckoner back in his hand if he wants to play around Bile-Blight, which he does.
Packs it in.
And there he
extends
is.
the hand.
And Neil Hartman, a round of applause from his buddies. Moving on to the semifinals, where Marcus the Bow waits with him with black-white mid-range. I think that's going to be a much tougher matchup for the burn deck,
Much
just
tougher.
based on my own personal experience. But
Yeah, I mean, a combination of Blood Barons and Obsidots, you know, that's definitely a lot of tough stuff.
so we have 3 of our 4 semifinalists locked in. We're just waiting on the results of Donovan Hammond.
That's black-white mid-range, black-white humans, and red-white, I guess, burn.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good mix so far. What's
And-
going to be the last spot?
Yeah, and it's, really kind of a breakout tournament, I would say, for Herald of Torment. Not something we really saw very much of in Atlanta. A couple decks here in the elimination rounds making use of it. And that card, plenty powerful, very flexible, modal, and possibly this is a sort of a breakout star from Born of the Gods.
Oh, I mean, whenever